This is Suhaila, and this is Grow With Me by Suhaila, the podcast. And this is episode 19. And this episode is titled, The Business of Transformation Equals Transforming Your Business. And this episode is more business related. I'm going to talk in this episode and the next one a little bit more about business, which is my forte, and building brands and things of this nature. And the premise is that when you transform yourself, you transform your business and your brand. In fact, you cannot transform your business or your brand until you transform yourself. I'll let the title speak for itself. Let's get into it. I want to talk a little bit more about business. I haven't talked about business too much in my podcast. I dedicated 2 episodes to it a few episodes back. It was called Born to Build, Part 1 and Part 2. But I just wanted to talk about it a little bit again because it's such a big part of transformation. And in particular, my business is transforming. It's growing, or rather, I like to say it's expanding. I don't know. Growing feels to me like vertical, where expanding feels horizontal. It feels like it covers more ground, like the horizon, right? As opposed to a tree, although it's both. And transformation is a big part of me and who I am. And it's interesting to me that a lot of people recently, my sister asked me, she said, she called me because she wanted to potentially do some business together. And she said, wait, and this is my sister, and we don't speak every day, but we speak regularly enough to know what we both are up to, or so I should think. But she said, I wanted to know if you were still doing marketing, because I see that you're into all of this healing stuff now and all of this, the other stuff you're doing, spiritual stuff. And I'm like, what? First of all, you of all people should know this has been the foundation of who I've been for a long time. As soon as I unconsciously started on what I call a spiritual and transformational path, even before I knew that that's what I was doing. But second of all, now that I consciously understand what I'm doing, and it's been conscious that I am on this path and creating things to support it, you should know how all of these things connect. So I reassured her. I said, yes, I still have my company, Linear Global Group. It's named after our grandmother. It's 12 years old. Marketing, brand development in some way will probably always be a part of my life, a part of my business. So whenever you see me do something new, just assume that it's adding to everything that I'm doing now, is adding to what I'm doing, not taking away anything. Because there's never been anything that I'm doing or creating from a business standpoint or otherwise that has not been intentional. It's not a hobby for me. This is my life's work. This is passion. This is purpose. And this is what I absolutely love to do. I would not be doing anything else. So this podcast is part of what she was speaking of. My newsletter, Spark by Suhaila on Substack, is part of what she was speaking of. And yes, those are an addition to what I now consider my ecosystem as I transform, as my business transform, and as I work with individuals. So I have a brand and marketing and business development company. And as I just said, it's called Linear Global Group. An extension of that is another platform and framework that I created called Awaken the Brand. It includes coaching, one-on-one strategy days for select clients. I have a 7-week 7-module online digital course. From that course, I created a book, My Awaken the Brand, Unleash Your Personal Potential Through Building Your Brand. That's available on Amazon and all the places. So it's an ebook. And I also have a feminine leadership course. It's called Feminine Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out. So essentially, I now have 2 courses, a book, a podcast, and a newsletter. And that has become an ecosystem for me. But the reason why, even though everything evolved naturally, it wasn't like, oh, let me try to be cool and do this podcast or this newsletter. It came from a need, first of all, a need for me to express myself and understand what is continually going on with me, because I am constantly in a state of transformation, even if I don't want to be, right? Life makes you transform if you meet it fully, right? And if you are up for the challenge, that can often be life, right? You have no choice. You either fly or fall, falter or figure it out. And sometimes it's a combination of both before you can get back on your own 2 feet. So I work with big brands in my job, in my business, big brands that sit and that are traded on the stock market. They're publicly held and publicly traded companies. I work with small brands and founders. So for instance, I've had NBC Universal as a client. I've had Diageo as a client, specifically Don Julio in 1942. I've had American Express as clients through my business. So that's what I consider bigger brands, right? That most people recognize. In the past, in my career, I've worked with brands like Coca-Cola. I've managed Coca-Cola in over 100 countries, and L'Oreal Cosmetics. And at the beginning of my advertising career, I worked on Verizon Wireless. Later, I worked on AT&T doing branded content. So I've worked on big brands, but I also work with small brands. And when I say small brands, I'm usually speaking of either it's not necessarily about the money, because when I say small brands, so for instance, I had an AI client in London. They had just raised $101 million. And that same year, we won Time 100 Best Companies or Most Creative Companies or something like this, right? So from a financial standpoint, that sounds like a lot of money. For an AI company, that's not necessarily a lot of money for a tech company. But regardless, that was a big deal. So even though I had a lot of visibility, it was still a small company as far as I'm concerned, because the number of people in it, even though it grew at a very fast pace from the time they launched to the time they continued to grow after they got that funding. But mostly when I say small brands, I usually mean newer. They're not legacy brands yet. They haven't been around for 50, 75 years, 100 years, like a lot of the brands that I worked on and began my career on, and I also worked in music. I worked in TV and film. I was a chief brand officer for a TV and film production company. I worked for, like I just said, across tech, currently across beauty and wellness, advertising and marketing. So I've worked across the gamut. And I also work with smaller founders. So meaning founders who have not raised $101 million, but they take their own money, they put their money where their mouth is, and they start their own business, right? They have a product they've created. So that's a lot of my work right now. And a lot of the work that I do now, especially through Awaken the Brand, services individuals like that. They're solopreneurs, they're entrepreneurs, they are small business owners, they are trying to figure out how to make their businesses work. They may or may not have the business or other skills that come with it. So a lot of my work was created to support that, because I have clients that need that, and they can't always afford big agencies. They can't always afford a lot of the things that bigger brands have used to get them to the place where they are. So all of my other work, like my podcast and newsletter, is because I too am an entrepreneur, and I understand the challenges we face internally all the time as people, because we're people before we're anything else. We can attach all these identities, all these titles, the cool titles, the not so cool titles. When you're an entrepreneur, you're everything from your own intern to the executive of your company, especially if you are a solopreneur and you're doing it on your own. So, but even if you're not, we hold so much with us. But before we add all of these identities and labels and titles to us, whether we think they are cool or not, we are humans first, and we are constantly transforming. So I know this because when I wake up with anxiety or when I am stressed about something, it takes so much for me to still show up for my business and myself. So this work is not separate. The newsletter and the podcast, my newsletter is based on emotional and mental well-being. I say I want to help people feel better and to feel better, meaning not be afraid of your feelings, because a lot of times we can be so afraid of our feelings, they can cripple us, especially if we are unfamiliar with them. And things like fear and anxiety, they can feel absolutely horrible. But I just feel like if we learn to embrace them, transform them, accept them, understand it, work with them, whether it's by ourselves with tools, which is a lot of what I do in all of my work. My commitment is always to offer tools to people. Tools, whether it's something as simple as an inspirational quote, because a lot of times in my life, that has been the thing that has gotten me through a lot on a dark day, and I can't do much. Throughout the years, if I see a quote, it will lift my spirits, get me out of bed. It makes me feel like, okay, I can do this. Or it could be as hefty as a book, or it can be, when I speak of tools, or it could be about healers or teachers or things that I've come across. Because so all of this work, my book, my podcasts, my newsletter, my courses, it's all connected, and it's become an ecosystem that is pretty much about transformation and self-development or growth or whatever you want to call it. Awaken the Brand specifically, I like to say it is brand development meets personal development powered by spiritual intelligence. And you don't have to have an actual brand, a physical or product brand to partake in what I am speaking about in my book and my courses and so forth. If you are just a person who's a thought leader or just someone who wants to show up in the world differently, show up in the world and have impact and be on purpose and bring that purpose and what you're here for and that fire inside of you out, all of this work is for everybody. But even if you don't need any of that, most people can, I think, work with or at least appreciate at least one of the things that I offer. So everything I do is about transformation. Everything that I am is about transformation. And that is what the basis of my existence is about. Not because I wanted it to be, not because I consciously said, hey, let me transform or let me change. It was because life called me to it, usually called me to the mat, called me to my knees in pain and suffering a lot of times where I didn't know what was happening with me. A lot of times due to early childhood trauma, all of these words and things that they don't really matter, the words, but it's things I started to discover. And that's why this is just a self-discovery journey, really, if we take all of the words out of it. It does not have to be daunting. It does not have to be scary. It doesn't even have to be a thing. It happens anyway, meaning you don't have to say, hey, I'm on this journey. Although it is nice to be able to consciously put yourself on a journey and say, this is what I want to be about. This is what I am about. This is what my potential is. And this is where I'm headed. So let me do everything I can to help myself get there, as I also pray to God that I get there, right? So that's transformation to me. All of my work is connected. It was funny when my sister asked, but I was like, wait a second, I can't believe she just asked me. This is my sister. Yeah, I still do this. I have a whole business. Like, what do you think I do for a living? It's so funny how people close to you can sometimes not know exactly what you do. So transformation is the name of the game. Transformation is the name of the game. And recently I came across a quote in Forbes. And it was so powerful. And the quote was, a leader cannot transform an organization beyond their own capacity to transform themselves. A leader cannot transform an organization beyond their own capacity to transform themselves. The quote was from a woman who I'd never heard of before. Her name is Muriel Wilkins, and she's an executive coach. So this is stuff that I have always been talking about, but I come about it usually from this lens, right? From a spiritual lens, from a very personal development, individual lens. Not normally do I approach it from a business lens first. So I was happy to see that in Forbes because they're known for business. So she's saying the same thing I am, but we are coming about it from a different angle, right? Different direction. So I decided after I saw that quote, which was a couple months ago in October, that I wrote a LinkedIn article based on that quote. A leader cannot transform an organization beyond their own capacity to transform themselves, because I thought it was so brilliant and it's so basic to me, and it's so and it's good to hear a business leader say that, because a lot of people, especially people who read publications like Forbes, they're about their money, right? First. I'm not about the money first. I care about the money, of course. I care about abundance. I care about prosperity, because I think it's our divine right and God's gift to us to all be abundant. Like the planet herself, right? The earth has flowers and trees and plants and sun and rain and moon and stars and outside of this atmosphere. And we don't have to pay for any of that. It's just part of the universe. So I think abundance is the name of the game. It's nature's abundance, right? Not greed. But most people, especially those people on LinkedIn and people who are growing their careers in Forbes, it's all about the money, or at least they lead with that. That's how they make their decisions. So it was nice to see a business leader say that, because you do reach a cap, right? You hit a ceiling if you do not transform yourself. And I know this. I have built teams. I have built myself, or I have evolved and transformed myself, right? And a lot of times, like I said, it was unconscious. Life demanded that I do, because it was either that or I'm going to be stuck in pain and suffering. And that's not a choice for me, right? So I will do everything I can to pull myself out of these places and spaces, usually that are internal, that make me feel stuck. So that's my way. It's been a very personal way, but it's always been connected to my business. If you are someone who has read my book, Awaken the Brand, I talk about that. And I've talked about it in other places, I think in my newsletter and maybe even on some of these podcasts, that my career path, my business path, and my spiritual path have run side by side. My entire life, they have informed one another. They have informed one another. When I didn't like how I'm being as an employer, an employee, usually when I didn't like who I was being as an employee, if I didn't understand the spaces I was in and I was struggling to fit in, when I was struggling to know how to manage and navigate corporate America and other parts, other industries, I leaned on my spiritual path. I leaned on prayer and meditation and these things to try to understand, why am I here? What is my purpose here? How can I serve? What am I doing? And then vice versa. My spiritual path gives me information to know how to show up. Okay, it's like I get the gem, and then I go back into the real world and say, okay, this is how I'm going to apply that, right? This is the answer to that. Or at least let me try something new, right? And that something new sometimes has nothing to do with anything really tangible. It could be grace that I'm applying. It could be compassion. It could be more empathy. It could be more understanding. It could be imagination. It could be creativity. It could be just how to understand people better, especially when you're leading teams and you have a bunch of people who are so different psychologically and in other ways, and you have to build teams that make sense for the personalities of each other, for everybody and for what your clients need. So have found myself often on my knees or in meditation praying about what to do about business, right? And what to do about my career. But it's because I care about the people. I care about the people and their experiences and what they're doing and how we're all going and growing through things in a place like work and business, where we oftentimes, or at least for me, I used to spend a majority of my time. That's not the case anymore, but that used to be the case. So it's important that we know who we are, right? So this is transformation. This is self-development. That quote was amazing. I'm glad I saw it in Forbes. I wrote an article on it on LinkedIn back in November. I'm currently recording this in December, the top of December. So if you want to go on LinkedIn and look me up and find that article, you can find it. And so that's transformation, right? In all of these ways, all of these things are connected. And I know they're connected because, as I said, I work with individual founders. I work with individual people, the people who founded companies, the people who lead companies, the people who are somebody's boss, and even the people who are not. But I work with them enough to know that they are often up against their own obstacles inside of themselves. And I know because I am one of these people. So this is why this podcast exists. And this is why my newsletter also exists. And even though it seems unlikely companion to the other work that I do, it is really part of what has become an ecosystem that was created intuitively based on what I need, what I need first, like what I needed to express, because when I find myself needing to navigate certain things internally, but also what I found that people I work with need to express. And you can't discount the personal part when you're approaching business. You just can't. And that's what that quote meant. A leader cannot transform an organization beyond their capacity to transform themselves. But also, I just wanted to add a few things here that are just a little bit more practical. Sometimes it's just transforming the way we think about business and very simple things like how we approach it. So a lot of times, entrepreneurs I work with, they didn't start with I'm not saying they don't have business degrees and advanced degrees, but what I'm saying, they usually started with an idea, right? Like, I think this thing, even the AI company, I think this AI tool will be good because, of A, B, or C for people who need it to help them with learning or things of this nature, right? But a lot of times it just started with someone's idea. It started with an idea. I see something missing out there that I myself need, right? This is what a lot of my clients have, why they have developed their products and services. Usually a product, I see a need. I see something that's missing. I needed it, so I created it. And now here I am with this brand and this business. Please help me, right? This is usually my clients, help me build this thing. Or they have already built it a little and they just need someone like me to come in to expand it or to help grow it, or to put the brand lens on it and the brand development story on it. Not necessarily product. I don't do too much product marketing anymore, but it's all connected. It's brand development, which is the brand marketing, right? What is the story of the brand? Who are we? What's the identity? What are the values? What's the ethos? All of these things, right? So this is the kind of work I do in addition to business development, which helps them then take what we do and then potentially raise more money, because we now have a strong brand story connected to a strong product story. And it's true, right? But it's all very values based. So a lot of the people I work with, they have come about what they're doing because of the idea came first, right? This vision, this creative vision for changing a category, an industry, the world, themselves, other people. That's how they have come about their idea to create their business around, right? And to build their brands around. So not to say they don't have business sense, because they do. But even the people who have advanced degrees, sometimes they only have advanced degrees in their field. They don't know the basic steps to like just manage the internal process, which is my forte, right? I know how to build structure. I know how to build frameworks. I know how to build systems. I know how to manage teams on top of the creative stuff that I'm also good at, because I'm a marketer and I'm a creative person as well. So I just wanted to offer in this podcast just 3 simple things that I see that a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, they don't know how important these 3 things are. They are the most important 3 things. I repeat these to my clients so much, especially when you're a solopreneur or entrepreneur. When I say a solopreneur, I mean you're likely just working by yourself. You're doing everything, even if you have an intern, even if you have an assistant. But if you have no one else, you're likely doing everything by yourself. But even if you're an entrepreneur and a solopreneur and an entrepreneur are the same things. I think if you are a solopreneur, you understand what I mean. You are literally building your website on the back end, maybe using Shopify or Wix or whatever your platform is. And, you're literally doing everything on your own. But either way, the 3 things that I think are so crucial for people to understand, to always, always, always keep in mind are these 3 things. And that is time, money, and people. Time, money, and people, time, money, and people. Every time you have an idea, the broader idea, so the broader idea, let's take the broader idea out of it, right? Whatever your idea for your business is, whatever it is that you're leading, whatever, just think of, but the components of that is what brings it to life, right? There are components. So if you say, I want to, launch this sneaker brand, okay, that's a very broad concept, right? The components are what bring it to life. Like, what is the first thing that I have to do? What is the second thing that I have to do? What is the third thing I have to do? And so on. And these ultimately become work streams or whatever you want to call them, where if you build your company and build your team, then you have people dedicated to all of the components, all of the work streams necessary to bring that project, that vision, that brand, that company to life, right? But the 3 things that I think are always important for people to think about are resources. And when most people think about resources, they think about money only. When I talk about resources, I'm talking about time, money, people. Of course, people always come first. They're the most important thing, period. They're the most important thing, period, no matter what you're doing. But time, money, and people they come together. They always come together. And I think that a lot of people miss this. I see it with my clients all the time. It's something I have to drill into them, try to get them to remember. I'm like, okay, if I'm not around and you have to be on this call and you're making a business decision, please remember that every time you make a decision, think about time, money, and people. Time, money, and people. So after a while, yes, it's really cool and exciting to have a lot of creative ideas, and you see them expanding and growing as you bring more people into the fold, and they add to your ideas and it takes off and it's exciting. Yes. But at the same time, you have to begin grounding yourself. Like, what can we reasonably do? And even if you're unreasonable, like me, I have very big dreams and they're not often very reasonable, but I like to make them happen, and I often do. So I'm not asking people to limit themselves. But what I am saying is that when you think about these things, it's really important to think about time, money, and people. In my field, what I do, ideas are a dime a dozen, right? I have been, like I said earlier, I have worked across industries, music, TV and film. I've worked in advertising. I worked in marketing. I am a marketer. I worked across tech, beauty, consumer goods, all the things, right? And I often see or am presenting presentations, right? I am either getting a lot of presentations or someone's presenting them, or I am presenting them on behalf of someone, right? And so creativity and ideas are a dime a dozen, not to diminish anyone's creativity. But for me, in my fields, I have seen probably more than most because of the fields that I have been in and the nature of my roles when I'm in them. So I have seen a lot of ideas. So ideas are a dime a dozen as far as I'm concerned. But once you get down to the nitty gritty and take the idea out of it, just remember the three most important things are time, money, and people. Every time you have a new idea, every time you want to introduce something new to the overarching idea, in the sneaker line example I gave earlier, you have to consider what's the time, the amount of money, and the people. And then you also have to think of how that shifts. So I like to tell my clients, like, if you suddenly are introducing something new that we didn't talk about last Friday, and you had a great idea when you were sleeping over the weekend, you woke up Sunday and you were like, oh my God, I have this new idea. Let's change the website. Let's add this to the website. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do the other. I am all for the excitement, but take a step back, ground yourself, and just always think, what's the time that it's going to take? What's the money it's going to take? Time and money are always related. And what are the people it's going to take? So if you suddenly need to rush something, for instance, and you have a website designer building your site and they're already 99.9% done, and you have a brand and a business that is going to launch on September 1st, and the website is the way that you are going to introduce your business and your brand, and you decide at the 11th hour that you want to add something new. It's not just about a visual that you are adding, right? It's not just an image. It's not, especially now with AI, you can quickly create an image and it's on that website, right? The website is just a visual presentation of your actual product. So you got to first make sure, where is this product coming from? Have I thought this through? Who's making it? Where is it being manufactured? How is it being delivered? Where is it being stored? When is it going to be available? Right? Are we putting on the website that it's going to be a pre-order? Are we putting an exact date? Is it going to be ready immediately? How are we describing this? How is it going to look? How are we rolling it out? Who needs to be involved? Does a press release need to be announced? You know, all of these things, right? And some of this might require more people, because if you are rushing suddenly to introduce something, that becomes rushing, right? It doesn't matter if it was only 99.9% done. If you are now adding a new component, you just added a whole new ingredient. So for the founder, a lot of times that I work with, they think it's no big deal, right? And they're not thinking about the team, and they're not thinking about the whole picture, or even themselves, right? They're not even thinking about, do I have the capacity to do this? So if you are the kind of founder or leader where you are the approver, it doesn't matter if you have 100 people working for you. If you need to approve everything, the buck stops with you. That's time. That's time that everyone is losing because they're waiting for you to approve something, or waiting for you to give them direction, or waiting for you to give them more details because you had this bright idea. And then if you are now asking it to be introduced at the 11th hour, okay, what does that mean for your website team? In the example that I gave, does that mean that they need more people to hurry up and finish the site that was almost done, this website, which that includes rush fees sometimes? Do we have to rush and get materials made, whether it's a product shoot, whether it's a visual, something? Do we have to rush to do something now because you now at the 11th hour want to incorporate something? So that's rush fees sometimes. That's more people because you now need it quickly, and you only had a couple of people, but now you need more people to bring it to the finish line because your deadline and your launch date did not move, right? You're asking people to do more, but you have not compromised in any way. So you're not saying, hey, we were going to launch September 1st, but now that I want to introduce this new thing, let's launch October 1st, December 1st. You're not saying that. You still want to meet your deadline, like most people. And so you're not willing to push it back, but you are introducing all these new components. So you have to think about all of this. Every time you're introducing a new component, something new, usually that starts with an idea or maybe something that needs to be fixed. You have to really think about, how is this affecting the time that we need to launch, the time that we need to do something, the time we need to release something. Okay. And then what people do we need? Do we need more people to bring it to the finish line? Or what have you? Do we need more time from those people? Even if it's not more people, the existing people, do we need more time from them? And is that going to cost me? So you see how time, money, and people are always related. So those three things are what I wanted to just offer here. In addition to just talking about this idea of transformation. And I think for me, my podcast in general is going to evolve a little bit. Or a lot. I probably are going to have a little bit more guests in 2026. And the through line will always be transformation, right? It's always going to be transformation. It'll be all of this. Anything related to transformation will be the through line. But this is what I wanted to talk about in this episode. I wanted to just offer that tip. I just wanted to offer the number one thing and the number one tip that I see people struggle with and they forget. They don't think about it because they don't know it. But always, always remember that time, money, and people, those are your resources. When you're thinking about resources, it's always time, money, and people. They go together almost always. Even when the smallest thing is introduced or changed, it's going to affect all three of those. Never is it just once. So a lot of times people are only thinking about the money. What is this going to cost me, right? Money is also attached to people, right? How much do these people need to be paid? So they might also be thinking about people in the back of their head, but usually not in the front. They're usually just thinking about it if it takes a person to create the new thing that they thought of, but it's usually not front and center the way it needs to be as its own sort of thought. Time, money, people, time, money, people, money, time, people, money, time. Those three are connected. They are related. They're important to your brand. They're important to your business. And always think about all three of those whenever you have a new bright idea. That's my 2 cents. I hope this is helpful. Thank you for listening. If you are interested in journeying with me a little bit further or a little bit longer, there are a few ways that you can do that. One of the ways is my leadership course. It is called Feminine Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out. It is a mini course. It is self-guided. It is soft. It is gentle. It is easy. You can do it anywhere. It's a PDF. You can download it. It is not the traditional leadership language mumbo jumbo. It's not heavy hitting. It's not heavy, it's not heady, and it's easy to download, and it's on Gumroad. So wherever you are listening to this podcast, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Podcasts, wherever you are, in every episode you will see an episode description. Beneath the description, down below, but before you get to my bio, which is all the way at the bottom, between those two areas, you will see a bunch of links. Amongst those links is the link for Feminine Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out. You can click there. It will take you to Gumroad, and you can download it right now. It's priced at $37. Quick and simple, easy, breezy. If you're interested, check it out. I also have a book, Awaken the Brand by Suhaila, Unleash Your Personal Potential Through Building Your Brand. I like to say this book is personal development meets brand development, powered by spiritual intelligence. So whether you have an actual business brand or just a personal brand that's also a business, or just a personal brand that's just you, I define a brand as a promise. So whatever that is for you, it does not have to be a business that is a business where you are generating money or trying to generate money. It's just about how we show up in the world through our businesses, through our brand. I'm really using brand as a path to higher consciousness. That's really what it is. I'm using business and brand as a path to higher consciousness. I use that word because it's something that everybody understands, but it really literally is also a business and brand book. So however you want to look at it, however you're approaching it, whether it's for yourself personal, whether it's for yourself because you actually have a personal brand like you're a public speaker, or whether you're a thought leader and you actually are building a personal brand, or that is your business, or whether you have an actual product service brand. It's for everybody. So you can also check that down below. I have another course. It's also called Awaken the Brand. It's what the book came from. The course came first, the book came second. So you can check that out below. That's on Teachable and Gumroad as well. And then I have a newsletter called Spark by Suhaila, and it is on Substack. Those are all of my offerings. If you're interested in any of them, you will find them below. Have a wonderful day. Sending you light and love.